Hello everyone, welcome to another episode of TCG Talk, back today with another video. And in today's video, we're going to be going over the card Retrace the Past. As you can see above me, the new Katsu specialization that's going to be coming out in the Hunted. I'm going to talk about several combo lines, what combo lines I think do really well in the deck, kind of talk about some macro strategies, how this changes how the deck plays and runs, so to speak, and just give you my overall general thoughts to help guide you a little bit after some decent amount of Talishar games with the new card and like just testing it out and giving my initial impressions. But if you're new to the channel, welcome. Thank you so much for stopping by. Hopefully you enjoy your stay. If you're a long-standing supporter, thank you so much as always. Feel free to check out the Discord down below as well as the channel membership. We will be doing the giveaway for Scarf this week. Don't think I forgot about it. 100% will be doing it after the Calling Chicago reveals, and kind of doing a little video on that, pick out some winners and do a short and reach out to y'all. But we'll get right into this. So I'm gonna bring up my normal window here, and then I'm just gonna use the card art as something. So I'm gonna bring up my most recent list that I think I shared with some people. There's some macro level strategies that I want to talk about, or at least macro level changes to the deck, and kind of give some general thoughts before we go card by card. So the first thing I'm going to do that's kind of a spoiler alert is I am not going to go over the Crouching Tiger combo lines. I'm not going to go over Key Unleashed. I'm not going to go over Pouncing Key, Chase the Tail, stuff like that. There's a couple reasons for that. One, if you want to run this into Retrace the Past, and for anyone that's not aware, it's right above me. It's a Katsu specialization, blue block 3 that has combo, and it says when this attacks, if a card with Gustwave and its name was the last attack this combat chain, name a card, then this gets that name +2 and go again. So it goes from a 0 for 2 blue block 3 with no go again to a 0 for 4 go again, and so on and so forth. So that this card is, I don't think, is naturally going to synergize well with the Crouching Tiger lines. Can you get some value plays off Key Unleashed and Mauling Key? 100%, but you have to build a deck that is less consistent. The merging the whelming or in general the surging and the tiger lines just doesn't really work consistently. And if you're gonna play Crouching Tiger, I hate being this player because I hate people that say like just play this hero, don't play this one, right? As an Arachne enjoyer, I hate when people are like just play new. I'm like, no, I like Arachne, you know what I mean? But in this situation, if you're playing Crouching Tigers, unless you just don't like Zen, which I completely support it, just play Zen, because that's the ninja that was meant for Crouching Tigers, right? So that's kind of the first thing. The second, there's a second and third kind of macro game plan with this, that what this card does and that fundamentally changes the deck. It allows you to do two things. One, it allows you to play this more mid-range style of Katsu, kind of like the old school Katsu's, kind of mid-range control-y that plays for a big turn. Not quite as control-y, but allows, since you're playing cards like Pounding Gale, which we'll talk about here in a little bit, Fluster Fist, you're running the Gustwave of Second Wind, that's a block 3 red that hits a break point, mcci Release, Break Tide, you're running Razor's Back in the deck, and you're probably on 18 to 21 blues at this point, and we'll talk about that in a second. You get to run this more natural, heavy blocking, but playing for a good combo turn game plan, kind of similar to what Katsu did with Bonds of Ancestry, but not quite as drastic. It allows you to really get the most out of value plays, really get good mask momentum threats with a bunch of breakpoints like Pounding Gale and Gust Waves and stuff like that, and Fluster Fist. And even when you're not doing the Unga Bunga stuff, you're able to really make the most of every line. Your 2-card plays are a lot more efficient than they were previously, just because of the general structure of the deck. You have more 3 blocks in the deck, you have more breakpoints in the deck, natural breakpoints, not even comboed breakpoints, and it just helps you out a little bit more. The second thing, or the last thing that it really does from macro strategy, is you just run more blues. Because your Retrace the Past is essentially a red in a blue form, right? It's basically a red, right? This card acts as a red offensively, but defensively and pitching wise, it's blue. So it really does help you be able to run more blues to have a better resource curve, but not feel flooded, if that makes sense. Because if you draw this card with any Gustwave, and you give it go again with Breezar Boots, or maybe you start with a starter and then you comboed in the Gustwave, no matter which one it is, it allows you to continue your turn. And it allows your blues to be a lot more synergistic to have these higher value turn lines, right? Like you can literally have in your hand, you know, a red Descendant Gustwave, a Find Center, and a Retrace the Past. It's not even that great of a hand, but I'm just giving an example. And you activate Tunic, play Descendant Gustwave, then you play Retrace the Past, you name Crane Dance, and then you play Find Center, right? You just did a 3-card 9, but you're threatening that really powerful on hit of Find Center, right? So if they don't have equipment, then it's going to be a bad day for them. So all I have to say, like, there's just little intricacies you can do with this higher blue count. Like for me specifically, I'm running 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22 blues in my list, which I've never ran above 18 in a long time. So that's kind of another thing, is it allows you to have this little bit more mid-rangey gameplay, a little bit more consistency, in my opinion, from a natural floor perspective of the deck, while also being able to play for those high combo turns. So that's kind of how that goes. But this isn't a deck tech video. I want to go through each of these combos that I thought were applicable starting out. And the first one, and we'll also get into Hurricane technique, so don't worry. So we're going to get into Blackout Kick. So this one is really interesting to me. I always love this card just in general. One, the artwork is sick, especially in foil. It was kind of like a bias card I always ran. Back in the Starvo chain era, I always ran one of these because in the late game, if you can keep this in your deck, that 1 for 7 at the end when you're both at single-digit life totals can just really swing tempo in your favor, especially if they've blocked out early in the chain. Literally the ProQuest was just a ProQuest that I got top 8 in with Katsu during a meta that Katsu had zero business ever getting a top 8 in, which was Starvo and Chain in Oldheim. I ended up, kind of really relying on this card a little bit at times. So the hard part with this card is just a natural curve. Like, you pretty much need a 4-card hand with normal leg tap to play this card. And sometimes it was just a little bit too hard to assemble all 3 parts of the line because you need Rising in your hand or you need this in your hand. Whereas now you just need this and Retrace the Past. And you can have Descendant Gustwave, you could have Gustwave with a second win, you could have Whelming. It's a little bit easier to get this card off. I don't think this is like an auto include by any means, but if you really like this line, if you want some late damage pressure, and you just want some raw value, which sometimes Katsu kind of just needs right now when he's playing against heroes like Aurora and Viscerai, then you can really rely on this line pretty efficiently. It also is good to chew up armor early in the game. Like, the good thing about Retrace the Past now that I've noticed, this is our macro concept, is when you use cards like Blackout Kick and cards like Break Tide, it really forces, sometimes it can, not all the time, but it can force out their armor early, right? They don't want that Break Tide trigger to hit to give you an extra card for your next turn and potentially maybe even give you a mask if you've gone 6 links, which isn't that hard to do with Kadachi's involved. Or Blackout Kick, maybe it's threatening mask on the 7 and they don't want you to get that, or they just don't want to take 7 damage, so they might give you a card and some armor to try and mitigate some stuff. All that being said, it helps chew through up some armor. So I do like this card. It's not an auto include by any means. I think there are some better consistent lines. If you had like a S, A, B, C tier, like a 4-tier list, this like tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, where tier 4 is the worst. I think this is like a mid to low tier 2 line for Retrace the Past. The next one is Break Tide. In my opinion, this is the best line for Retrace the Past. It's one of the easiest things to do because this card is almost fills every other condition when it's not turned on to help, mitigate some consistency issues. It's a yellow block 3, costs 0 to play, so you can discard if you need to. It blocks 3 if you needed to, if you just know you're not going to use it, especially if you're running like 2 of these in the deck. It can pitch for Kadachi's, it can pitch for a Surging Strike. It has some flexibility, but this card's super easy to now turn on, and it just makes things really difficult on your opponent, especially when you already have like a Gustwave and a Retrace the Past in hand, especially a Descendant Gustwave. Being able to go like Kadachi, Descendant Gustwave, you still have 2 cards in hand, Retrace the Past is something else. They block you with the second Kadachi or the Descendant, then you play Retrace the Past. Normally, they will not block, or they have not blocked on one of those 2 attacks just by the way the things go. It's just how normal blocking goes against Katsu. And then you name open Rushing River, and you go get Break Tide. It's really good chain ender. That 5 dominate really allows you to, again, chew up their armor if they don't want it to hit, or to get a card for your next turn and start to value train. This card's also interesting because I still think you should always run breaking skills. Do not get me wrong when I say this, but the cards like this really help Shuko make a little bit more sense at times. If you are running some yellow Descendant Gustwaves, you're running stuff like Break Tide, Retrace the Past, running yellow Whelmings, you could make an argument for Shuko, especially into certain matchups like Enigma, where you maybe want to turn that on every now and then. But that's like a, really kind of outer perspective. But Break Tide is the tier 1, I think, inclusion. I think you could run 2 of these. I was on 1 on the list you just saw, but I'm thinking about running 2 just because I might go to 1 mcci release and run 2 of these. The only thing this doesn't have that is kind of a more macro concept now is Katsu has a lot of breakpoints in the deck now. If you're running Fluster Fist, if you're running Pounding Gale, if you're running things like mcci release, things like even Gustwave, the second one, which we'll talk about here in a second, you have a lot of breakpoint attacks, which even on your 2-card plays allow you to go Kadachi 1 for 4, or Kadachi 1 for 5 with Pounding Gale, or Kadachi 0 for 4 in order to threaten mask and potentially get that value and force your opponent to interact with you a little bit. This doesn't quite do that. It's the only downside to the card, but I think it's still an S tier in terms of being able to be used with Retrace the Past properly. The other thing, and the final thing I'll say is, because it costs 0 as a chain ender, as opposed to Pounding Gale costing 1, or mcci costing 1, if you're going to go that route, or any other that costs something. When it costs 0, it allows you to have these easy 6 chain link wide plays that allow you to do a lot of cool stuff, right? Like I said earlier, when you do like Kadachi, maybe you have a 5-card hand, you do like Kadachi, Descendant Gustwave. Let's just say they block this in Gustwave. You already have Retrace in hand. You play Retrace. That's not that hard of a line to have, by the way. You've now used 3 cards. You have 2 cards left, and you name Rushing River. And it hits. You can then play something. You can play Break Tide. It gets, Dominate. You can pop Breeze Rider Boots, see what you hit. Like, there's a bunch of stuff you can do because it costs 0, is what I'm trying to say, that you can then play into something else. It allows you to mix up where it's played on the chain. You can play it really late as a chain ender and a turn ender to try to set up a good hand next turn off like your second mass threat, especially when they block that second Kadachi. Like, if you go Kadachi, they block the second, then you play Descendant Gustwave, it hits because they just blocked the first thing, or maybe they even block that, and you play Retrace the Past, then they let that hit because they're like, okay, whatever, even if he names Russian River, I don't care. Then you play Break Tide, you're forcing your opponent to interact with you a minimum of twice to stop that mask hit, so it can be really, really useful for that. So because of that, I like Break Tide a lot. The next one's Cyclone Roundhouse. This one's whatever. I mean, it's a 2 for 5. Its on hit is extremely, like, this card's almost in the Crouching Tiger aspect for me. Like, it's too niche. At the beginning of this reaction set, banish a random defending card from each chain link. It's only good when you're trying to like get rid of a dynamo or get rid of a piece of equipment, but it's super telegraphed. It doesn't have dominate. Like, you can't razor it, so you either have to pummel it if you were crazy enough to run that card in Katsu, or you have to Ancestral Empowerment it. You can breaking skills it, I guess, but you breaking skills it at 6, so people can just clean block this with 2 cards and that's it. I don't know. I don't really like this card too much. I don't think it's going to be high on the totem pole. It is a fun card. I love the artwork, but it's just not quite up there. The next one is Dishonor, and this honestly is probably why this card was made, on top of just trying to improve Katsu, because this allows you to turn on the bonds line back, right? Because it says when this hits a hero, if you control a Surging Strike, Descendant Gustwave, Bonds of Ancestry, that hero loses all abilities for the rest of the game. So you're able to, the simplest line is Surging Strike, Descendant Gustwave, Retrace the Past, name Bonds of Ancestry, and then you play this card. The only downside to this card, as opposed to how it used to play, is you're always, literally always, unless you have a double Retrace the Past turn some way, somehow, you're always going to be naming Retrace the Past, Bonds of Ancestry, because you have to, because you can't run that in your deck, right? It's not like certain situations like where you could start with Descendant Gustwave and, go into Bonds, and then, some people would start in Surging Strike, they would play Whelming, then they would play Bonds because they already had a Dishonor in their arsenal, then they would go get Descendant Gustwave, then play Descendant Gustwave, then they would play Dishonor, or something like that. Like, they would try to extend the turn, and basically have either a double bonds turn or try to mix it up to where their opponent really committed early to block out some stuff, and then they can't block Dishonor late. You can't do that anymore. This card's very face up. It's still extremely powerful. I definitely would play it on a 3-card hand off Tunic. If they let you hit something, you go Descendant into Retrace the Past, name Bonds of Ancestry into Dishonor. You just did a 3-card 11 off Tunic, and you just have a good value play, right? Like, you're not going to get the full line, but at least you get some value. And then if you do get lucky to get that full Surging line, then you can, threaten the powerful on hit. But overall, this card's a lot more face up, but it does help you in those value plays, and I think that enough makes it like a top thing. The next one being Find Center. Find Center is extremely good now. Yes, the errata allowing the block with equipment sucks, but late game, this can really turn the tide if they've, their kind of shields down, they've used up their equipment with other stuff, and you're able to get this to hit. It really can shift the tempo and get that Zen State token and really go off to the races. What this does in the early game, if you want it to do it, like if your opponent has one really good like Battle Worn 2 piece of equipment, you play like a Dory or a Guardian or something like that, this card will help eat up some of that armor, which again is super important because when you get to that combo turn in the mid to late game, you want their armor to be chewed up if you can, to help, be able to push as much damage as humanly possible, especially on these perfect Retrace the Past turns where on mcci lines where you can get up to like 30 plus damage pretty easily. This allows you to be able to do that because you've done the legwork in getting their equipment down early in the game with like a good Find Center line or a good Break Titan line, which is really nice. The next one's Flutter Force. I put this in here on purpose. Don't run this card. For the love of God, please don't run this card. I know it says if Rushing River or Flutter Force was the last attack this combat chain, reveal the top card of your deck. If the card with combo, put it into your hand, then Flutter Force gains +3 and go again. So at best, this is a 0 for 4 go again that draws you a card. I understand its appeal. I love the artwork on the card. The foil of this card is literally one of my favorite arts in the game. So trust me when I say I love this card. Don't play it. How many times, if you're sitting there and you've played Katsu and you're watching this video, how many times have you played an Ancestral Harmony and that card is whiffed? A lot. I mean, even in my list right now that I'm looking over here, I got 3 Ancestral Empowerments. Those are all misses. I have 3 Raised Reflexes, misses at 6. I have Ancestral Harmonies. If you end up writing those, that's 9 misses. I have 9 misses in my 60 card core. Yes, or IMB like wires. Sorry, 12 misses in my 60 card core. Then you have Surging Strikes. Gosh, it's late. I can't count. 18 misses. It gets even worse the more I look at my deck, right? So 18 misses. Over almost a third of my deck in a 60 card core is a miss. You're going to take that chance just to have 0 for 4 go again, draw a random card that may or may not help you. I don't think it's quite worth it. Now, is it super fun? Yes. Can you play it just because FU TCG Talk? I love the card, 100%. And I encourage you to do so because I will probably play this card at some point just for funsies. But for competitive purposes, do not play this card. The next one's Fluster Fist. This one is up there with Break Tide and Dishonor as like one of the better lines you can play. This is probably one of the cleaner things you can do now when the mcci line probably isn't the best option, or you don't think you're going to get Dishonor to hit. This card and Pounding Gale are probably your 2 best finishers now, even above Break Tide, in my opinion. So being able to do lines like Surging Strike into Descendant Gustwave, one of those hits, you already have this in hand, or you already have Retrace the Past in hand. You go get one or the other, and then you name Retrace the Past, open the center, and then you play Fluster Fist. Even certain lines where you like Kadachi, that the first 2 hit, you play Ascendant Gustwave. Let's say they don't let it hit, but then you play Retrace the Past and you name open the center, they let it hit, or let one of the 2 hit. Then all of a sudden open the center is coming in for the 2 Kadachis hitting a 6, and maybe one of the attacks is 7. You're ending on a 7, right? So it's really, really nice. You can easily have 4 card, if I'm doing my math right, 4 card 15 16s, which is not too bad. Spanning over 6 links, 5-6 links, being able to threaten Mask of Momentum twice potentially. Just a really, really good card. It's not going to come in for like 10 or something crazy unless you just go bonkers. But this card almost always, in my opinion, when turned on with Retrace the Past now, is probably going to be coming in for 6, if not 7. So really, really good card overall. At the worst, if you turn it on, that means it's coming in for 5 because something hit somewhere along the chain. So finishing on 0 for 5, not too bad. Same thing with well, not same thing. I thought Pounding Gale was next. 100 wins is not bad. It's not really affected by the Retrace to Pass line. It's not that it's not good or bad. It's just there's other things you can name better. I would never want to name Retrace to Pass 100 wins, in my opinion, because that means I've played a Gustwave before Retrace to Pass, and now I'm ending on a 100 wins line, and that doesn't really make sense. 100 wins is something you want to start a chain with 9 times out of 10, not end with. So because of that, unless you're really just trying to close the game out late with like a 6-power 100 wins or something, but I mean, there's other better ways to do that. Next one's Hurricane Technique, similar to Blackout Kick. I love this card. The cost curve on this card's a little bit wonkier. It is really nice when you have like a blue and you can go like Descendant, Retrace the Past, Name Rising Knee Thrust, Hurricane Technique, gets go again, comes back to hand if it hits, and you play Hurricane Technique with your last resource. So you can get those cool play lines. I like Blackout Kick a little bit better just for the sheer damage. Because you're not always going to get that second swing with Hurricane Technique. I'd rather get the guaranteed 7 damage off the line instead of a conditional, what it would be, 9 damage, right? Otherwise, it's just going to be 5. But it is a yellow block 3, which does help a little bit more of pitching for Surging Strikes and such. So it's pretty good. I think I'd actually run Blackout Kick over Hurricane Technique, though, if you are going to include something from that line. And then the Lord of Wind line or mcci Release. I didn't put mcci Release in here. I just put Lord of Wind in as a placeholder. This line gets even better now. Now you can only have to run like 1 mcci Release. The only problem with the Lord of Wind line when you use Retrace to Pass as a filler for mcci Release is you don't go like you haven't gone and got more Lord of Winds because that's what mcci Release does if it hits. So it's a little bit harder to get that value out of it. But what it does allow you to do is mcci Release used to be kind of telegraphed now, so to speak. It kind of was most effective when your opponent misblocked. Now you're able to like switch up when mcci Release happens. Like it could be super early. You could go like Descendant Gustwave, Whelming, Retrace the Pass, name mcci, and then play Lord of Wind. You could even go like Kadachi, Whelming Gustwave, Razor it, and then go straight into Retrace the Pass, and now you don't need an additional resource for mcci. Stuff like that, because a lot of Katsus have realized like there's times where you don't have that one extra resource for mcci. Like there's sometimes where you want to go Kadachi Surging Strike because you already have the Whelming and you want to like trick or force your opponent into blocking that Surging. Then you play Whelming, but now you don't have the extra resource from mcci unless you have Tunic. This allows you to get around that, still get the value, and then go into Lord of Wind. You just can't pay extra into it. So it all depends on how you want to do it. It doesn't affect the line too much. It just allows you, for lists where they were running 3 mccis, you now can run like 1 or 2, in my opinion, and then use Retrace the Pass to kind of fill that spot when needed. Then you have Pounding Gale. This card is, in my opinion, the best card for Retrace to Pass because this card forces the opponent to block. They don't have a choice. And they might have already blocked a little bit in the turn, and now they just have to give you their hand. Because this card is, if unblocked, when it's comboed, it's a 1 for 10. Because it says, if open the center of his last attack this combat chain, Pounding Gale gains. If Pounding Gale would deal damage to a hero, instead it deals double that damage. So if you play this after, you do Surging Strike into Descendant Gustwave, into Retrace the Pass, name open the center, then you play this card with your 1 resource floating that you had, on a 5-card hand. Like, they probably try to block out some of all those really powerful attacks I just named, and now they're staring at a Pounding Gale, and if they don't block at all, they get dealt 10 damage at the end of all that. If they only block for 3, they're still dealt 4 damage. And if you razor this somehow, some way in a different line that's less tax resourceful, you're all of a sudden potentially dealing 16 damage, right? Maybe your opponent says, F it, it's early in the game, I have a 5-card hand, I'm going to go nuts here, and then you deal 16. I have dealt the 10 damage already because I've had times where my opponent fully blocked out and I had the natural line, and then they just get slapped with 10 damage, or they just give me all their armor so they don't lose a quarter of their life in 1 turn after giving me an entire hand. So super, super good. I think this is quite literally the best thing because it does everything you want to do even when it's not turned on. It's a 1 for 5, which allows you to have a 2-card 7 on a blue, threatening mask momentum. It goes over top of a D-React. It goes over top of a D-React and 1 piece of equipment or 5 block because of breaking skills. It's just really good. Does everything you want it to do. And then we have Gustwave of the Second Wind. I know this is kind of a weird thing because it's not a finisher, but I thought this card got a lot better with Retrace to Pass, because Retrace Pass just cares about Gustwave. And there might be times where you don't care about going in naming bonds to go into Dishonor. You don't care about naming mcci. So you don't really care if you have a whelming or a descendant before Retrace to Pass. Sometimes you might just want to go, 100, be like water or surging into Gustwave of the Second Wind, into Retrace to Pass, naming Rushing River, into Breaktide. Or there might be what I've noticed, and I've had it happen a couple times, is you lead with 100 wins and they let it hit, and you've already blocked with your Breezewater Boots, and you know you're not going to have a better opportunity to use Breezewater Boots, so you pop Breezewater Boots, you already have this Gustwave in hand, go get Retrace to Pass, play this Gustwave for 0 for 4, go again off Breezewater Boots, play Retrace to Pass, naming something else, maybe you have a Breaktide in your hand, naming Rushing River, then you play Breaktide for 0 for 5, dominate, go again on hit, banish a card that you can use, so it allows you to have that flexibility with Breezewater Boots. This has actually became one of my better Breezewater Boot targets when I have this in hand with a starter, to be able to go get Retrace to Pass and have a really good pop-off turn. It's also a 0 for 4 that works really well with Razor Reflex. Being able to go Kadachi, 0 for 4, Razor it, just like Fluster Fist. It's now a 1 for 7. On hit, go again, draw a card from Mask Momentum if they didn't block Kadachis. So really, really good there. It hits a natural breakpoint even when it's not reacted upon, which is really nice for those momentum triggers, especially if they just want to lock it out with a Sink Below and maybe you have to break and scales it for some reason, whatever the case may be. So really, really good card. I think you want as many Gustwaves in your deck as possible, and I have seen a lot of lists where they're running 3 Descendant Gustwaves and like 9 Whelming Gustwaves. I would just take out the yellow Whelmings and run this. I know yellow Whelming has a good on hit of a 0 for 4 on hit, or 0 for 3, on hit draw card. I just feel like this card is a little bit more consistent in what you're wanting to do. That's just my opinion, but that's how that is. And then as a bonus card, I'm not sure about this card yet. I want to try it more, and I will try it more here in the future. Put a Surging Strike and a card with combo from your graveyard on the top and or bottom of your deck. Sometimes you might want to be able to go get Retrace to Pass. That might end up being your best option. It gives you the most flexibility, especially if you already have a lot of, maybe you've played a couple Surgings, they blocked them out, and you just couldn't quite get a Whelming or send it after them, so you still have them in your deck, but you want to go get your Retrace to Pass back and bring a Surging Strike back. Really good for that. I think it's really cool to maybe run one of these. I love this card anyway. I've always wanted this card to work a little bit more naturally, and I think it actually is pretty decent with Retrace to Pass. It gives you a lot more flexibility in what you're bringing back. So that's the cards I have for today. Hopefully it made sense. I just wanted to talk about it more in a generalistic way instead of like showing you every line and just making it super convoluted. I mean, we're at 27 minutes right now, and I was just kind of going through each line. Right now I have, as you can see, I have 1 Breaktide, 2 mcci Release. This might go up to 2. I might end up taking like 1 Gustwave of Second Wind out, or maybe I even substitute one of these Spinning Wheel Kicks for another Breaktide. I wouldn't mind trying that. We're all obviously running the 3 Fluster Fists. As you can see, a lot more of a mid-range list. I mean, we only have 3, 6, what do we got here? 9, 12, 15, 18. We have 18 2-blocks in the list, which for an aggro deck or like a Katsu deck is actually pretty low. So I'm happy about that. But overall, the deck's been really good. Been really enjoying it. Hopefully you all have as well. Katsu's definitely back in a better spot than he was. I don't think it's like a top tier deck by any means, but it definitely went up a rung, and I think the deck is a lot more playable now and a lot more flexible. So we'll see what happens when Hunted comes out there. That could change everything in terms of where Katsu sits. If we get even more powerful assassins, more powerful ninjas in Syndra, things of that nature. So let me know what your thoughts are. I'd love to hear it. If you like this type of content, please leave a like, comment, or subscribe. If I was confusing on anything, let me know. Whenever I do macro gameplays like this, I try my best to be concise and actually give you good thoughts. But if you don't think I'm quite hitting the mark, please let me know. These videos I always try my best to get better on, but you always can improve. Hopefully y'all are staying safe. Again, I've said this in a couple of videos this week, but it's the holiday season. We're 12 days away from Christmas right now. And for me, it's a really important time of year emotionally, because I knew a lot of people that love this time of year, But I also know a lot of people that are struggling this time of year. It's a very emotional time of year. People think about loved ones, think about, past experiences, and sometimes, it can lead you down a more sad path than a happy path. So definitely reach out to people, say hi, let them know you're there, let them know they're not alone, especially if you know somebody that could be struggling this holiday season. Be kind to everyone, love everyone, and yeah, I'll see y'all next time on TCG Talk. Thank y'all so much. Have a great night.